pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Superintendent Skipper, will you call the roll, please?
Certainly. Ms. Palmer? Ms. Krepshin? Here. Madam President Ballantyne?
Here.
Mayor Curtatone? Mr. Green?
Here.
Ms. O'Sullivan?
Here.
Ms. Patone? Dr. Ackman?
Here.
Ms. Norman?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Fantastic. And I need to read, in accordance with the Massachusetts Open Meeting Law, please note that video and audio of this meeting is being recorded and may be shown live on both local access cable television and on the City of Somerville website and will be available for future review. Thank you. I love our second agenda item, awards and citations. Item A, welcome new Ward 2 School Committee member Alana Krepchin, who is filling in for the rest of this term for Dan Futrell, who left us for a job in Chicago. And so I've known Alana from a distance, but with great, I'm so impressed. Such an active member of the Argenziano community and the greater Somerville community. And she's running unopposed in Ward 2, and at our last meeting, she was unanimously voted in to fill in for the rest of this term. So with a very warm and supportive welcome, Alana Krepchin from Ward 2. Alana, would you like to say anything?
Sure. I just wanted
Great.
to say thank you for that warm welcome. Looking forward to working with you all. And yeah.
Fantastic. Anyone else? Okay. Keeping in that nice, good, warm feeling, item number 3 is the student representatives, and we have an introduction and welcome of 2 new student representatives. Superintendent Skipper, would you like to introduce our fantastic new students?
Certainly. So it is my honor. We have 2 wonderful new student representatives. One is a sophomore and one is a junior. I'll start with Ekaterina Hicks Magana. We welcome her. She's a junior, and as part of the student body, CAT, as she's called, believes school committee reps are able to offer valuable insight and a unique perspective on what happens in Somerville and on issues that may arise and what it means in general to attend the high school. She believes she's a student mediator. She's part of the choir in the Highlander Theater Company. She's worked with teen empowerment as a youth organizer to destigmatize mental health amongst youth and Cambridge Health Alliance to teach about sexual and reproductive health to middle schoolers. She was nominated by both Ms. Mosby and Mr. Ensdorf, and so we're very, very happy to have Kat on the committee.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Kat, would you like to say something?
All I'll say is thank you for having me here. Thank you for the nomination, well, to my teachers, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to speak with all of you. So thank you.
Well, we welcome it. We look forward to hearing from you. And our second?
So Natalia Castile Salamaran, who is a sophomore at Somerville High School, she's demonstrated that she's both a hard worker and determined to better her community. She works in the after-school program at the East Somerville Community School. She also participates in the Calculus Project. She's enrolled in our dental assistant program within CTE. She is the sophomore class officer, where she is the secretary, and she was nominated by her math teacher, Miss Leary. So welcome, Natalia.
Would you like to say anything? And you don't have to either.
I would just like to say thank you for this amazing opportunity, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone and getting to know everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to jump in there?
I just wanted to say I had the opportunity to sit through the student interviews for the many students that were nominated. And I can honestly say these 2 young ladies really stood out in so many great ways. It was clear their passion, their commitment, and one of the things in explaining the positions was to say, I'd like to have students who would also be willing to listen to what goes on at school committee and weigh in on the various items that impact them as students. And they said, that's us, we will do that. So I'm really looking forward to hearing their voice and having their energy on the committee. So welcome both.
I just want to emphasize what Superintendent Skipper said. We we very much value your time. We know that you are both very busy young women, and coming to represent the students is an important commitment, but please never hesitate to weigh in, or, sometimes we'll be in some discussion that'll have some history, and if you want some clarifying information or backstory, please, please, please don't hesitate. We love it. We are going to take one more item, and then we're going to take a quick, Ms. Palmer.
I had a quick question and a comment to the new student representatives. The question was just, what did the process end up being?
Through you, Madam Chair. So what we did was Principal Lagambina and the Alicia Kirsten sent out to all of Somerville High School that we were looking for student reps and the description of what a student rep did. From that, teachers then nominated a variety of students. And so there were, I think, 8 or 9 students who were nominated. Those students then wrote in response to say, this is what it would mean to me, this is why I'd be excited to do this, for the students who chose to take up on the nomination. And then there was short interviews that each of the students came down. They sat with both Ms. Kirsten, who heads up the student council, as well as Principal Lagambina, and I was able to go to some of them. And then from that, there was a vote or choice as to who they thought could be able to fulfill the duties and would add and value added to the committee. So it was a pretty thorough process.
You wouldn't mind sharing with the committee what the description was?
Sure, I can have Ms. Kirsten do that.
And then just a quick comment, a welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. Very excited to work with you as well. There is a custom that it is possible to take things out of order on the agenda, which you're seeing this evening. So if there is ever something on the agenda that you want to be sure to participate in, and you know you can't stay till the end of the meeting for whatever reason, that's something you can talk to the chair about.
And we are very responsive around midterms and finals and field trips and anything else. So by all means, and I'll make sure you have my contact information, but also you can just grab me right before the start of a meeting. Mr. Green, did you have something?
Again, welcome. We're glad to have you. Speaking to ways in which student members can be influential and have their voices heard, I know that state law forbids us from giving you a vote in the full body, which I think is a ridiculous law, but it is the law. But I would say that we do have subcommittees whom we can put whoever we want on and give you a vote. And a lot of our actual discussion happens on subcommittees. So if that was something you might be interested in, I know that I speak for all our members when I say we'd love to have you.
Fantastic. And my understanding is you have an update for us tonight. You're jumping right in. Is that correct? Fantastic.
Yeah, so Mr. Lagambina told us that you'd like to hear a bit of a report on how the high school's been going since school started. Yeah, so we have a bit of a list. Yes, we do. So we were starting off, so the first day of school, it was a bit different. We had our grade level assemblies in which different speakers spoke to each of the grades. I know that the senior assembly was a bit longer than the others, but for my assembly, I believe there was a woman speaking about different parts of, was it the Title IX for yours, right?
Yes, it was.
So it was different parts of like the school.
Yeah, we've also had speakers from the new sports director as well. We got to meet him, and he talked a little bit about himself, and it was just a way for students to get more comfortable with him, so I guess that helped.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that happened the first day. They also informed us that we'll no longer be doing advisory. At our school, we had a period the end of every Wednesday. Sometimes we had assemblies, other times we had advisory, just for students to talk about things such as college planning, things going on in the school. For example, we have the Highlander habits that we'll probably bringing up as well. But yeah, they informed us that we'll no longer have our advisory the end of every Wednesday. So during that period when we weren't in the assembly, we had some community building activities.
Yes, so in our advisory for the first day, we got to hear each other's opinions as a class. So we talked about little issues we made, or any confusion due to the construction or due to the no advisory. So we got to talk a lot about that, and that was great. Do you want to jump into the student council meeting?
For, just for the first day, with the community building activities, it was nice because we got to speak to our classmates a bit after the long break. And yeah, so the teachers led that. One thing that we didn't really touch on for the first day was the Highlander habits. So we'll talk about that. We actually discussed a bit of that at the,
You just explain to the rest of us what a Highlander habit is.
Right. Well, I'm not completely sure either, but the Highlander habits are like a set of school norms. I believe that they're like principles that the school is attempting to establish amongst all of Somerville High School. So a lot of them include physical expectations. They include college preparation expectations, respect expectations. So I don't have them memorized. Bless you. I don't have them memorized, but we've been talking about them.
Not a pop quiz, that's great. That you're working on them is great, and we look forward to hearing more about them in the future. Thank you.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully we'll keep up on those, but that's what the Highlander habits are. And we did discuss that in the student council meeting.
So our first student council meeting was last week on Tuesday. We met during X Block. So this year, students they're allowed to sign up, as well as teachers are allowed to nominate students who they believe show leadership amongst their classmates. They were invited to the student council meeting, and we all got to meet, have some quick icebreakers, get to know each other, and then we jumped right into things we'd like to get done this school year, or problems we see within our class or school. So we talked about what change we wanted to do, and a big one was change about who gets the representation. So this may be like sports team get most of the front page, and students want other clubs to be seen as well. So this may include like theater or art clubs or any club. So do you want to?
Yeah, so that was one of the things we discussed in the meeting. We were talking about, basically we got a bit of an introduction to what the student council is all about. So it was our first day, so we had a bit of kind of like a constitution that we're kind of altering as we go along. And we were discussing what that meant to us and what were our values. So we were kind of defining those. As Natalia said, we were talking about how we believe certain clubs or sports have a bit of a preference over others. I actually noted out recently to a soccer player in one of my physics classes. I was like, oh, so y'all are sponsored by Puma. Interesting. The Highlander Theater Company is not. So that was something that we were talking about, that we feel like there's, unfair things. We talk about school spirit was something we discussed in the student council meeting. A lot of students felt that there wasn't school spirit. I know that there's been like weeks when we try to do the school colors, and we try to do, the seniors have a challenge, the water gun challenge? I don't know. But yeah, no, I think that's super cool, but we also acknowledge that not a lot of people participate because, as me and Natalia were talking about, people have a lot of things going on outside of school, so sometimes the school spirit isn't as fostered. So we kind of touched on that. The Highlander habits, we were wondering who made those up, how they're going to be talked about. There's just a bit of confusion, but hopefully we'll get that sorted out. We also talked about surveys and how those can improve the school.
Yes. So there was like mixed emotions on surveys. Some people said, oh, they don't really help because students just see it as like, oh, another homework or another thing to do. And sometimes there are students who actually take the survey, and then we can get some input. So it's just some mixed emotions on that. But overall, surveys seem to semi-help here, because I feel human interaction is what I feel is going to help more if we're going to want to hear about everybody's voice.
You all have had a very busy first month of school. I will say that is, if that is your first one, that is one of the more substantive ones we've ever had. So I'm really looking forward to working with you two this year. This is going to be very exciting. Are there any other questions or, okay. Ms. Patone.
Through you, Chair, this is probably to the superintendent. First of all, quick welcome to our new members. It's very exciting. Thanks to everyone who set that up. I had put a question forward in the spring about the Student Advisory Committee from Mass General Law. I don't know if there was a follow-up to that, and maybe it was in the last meeting, and I apologize because I couldn't be in attendance. But that was something that is regulated in Mass law, that the school committee is actually supposed to meet with an advisory committee of 5 students from the high school every other month. And it's not something that we have in our policy, but it's in Mass General Law. So I just wanted to know what the follow-up on that was, or if it's still in process.
Superintendent Skipper, can you speak to that?
Through you, Madam Chair. So I believe that Attorney Long was not familiar with the practice. I believe that he was checking with other districts and looking at their policies and really couldn't find much. So he is still looking, and we agreed that we would take it up when he's back, which I believe is in about a week and a half.
Okay. President Ballantyne?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I want to say welcome. I'm so impressed with what I heard. In particular is sort of the equity issue when you're talking about athletics being on the cover. Did you say it was the newspaper or the
Said that we just felt there was more funding and more of a headline.
Okay. All right. So I'm so happy that you shared that, because the data will show that that is in fact some of the issues. And on the city council side, we are trying to address that in terms of parks and recs, and sort of the funding dollars that are attributed to girl programs is about 30% of the funding dollars, where 70% goes to boy programs. And I think the data is similar on the school side. So we set up a committee, a special committee on equity, to try to really drill down on that. So you've just sort of validated, in fact, what the data has shown. So I really appreciate you sharing that piece.
Any other comments? We are going to take one item out of order in the interest of Mr. Simone's very long days these days, and then we will take a quick 5-minute break to welcome our new members. So we are going to hop right down to new business, down to the Somerville High School shuttle and MBTA bus stops. Mr. DeSimone?
Good evening, everyone. Through you, Madam Chair. I can talk a little bit about the first week of school. I'd rather talk about currently how it is. It's much better with the buses. We've added a 3rd bus. Currently we have about 438 students that are bused from Somerville High School to Edgerly from block 1 to block 7 each and every day. With the 3rd bus, it's made a huge difference. This morning we had 66 students show up directly at Edgerly, and that varies between the first couple weeks, it went from 30 to 40 to 50, and last week we had one day it was about 72 students on Friday. So we have a lot of students that live east of this part of the city that come directly to Edgerly. So I know initially there was some concerns about the buses and how they were parking, and we seem to have worked that out with the bus company to get a better system down. There would be days when they would send us 3 buses. There would be days when they would send us 5 buses. So unfortunately 5 buses would show up here. We pretty much have that coordinated now, where in the early morning we have 2 buses show up here. I'll keep one down there. And we have a person that's out on the sidewalk he's assigned to that site each and every day. And we communicate back and forth with the radio so that we keep 1 bus down there at all times, 2 up here so that it doesn't take up too much parking. And we load the buses immediately, and they go down Sycamore right to Broadway to cross. And it's been working out pretty well. And each and every block throughout the day, there's a minimum of 2, maximum of 3 buses that go each and every block. First block, they come from here to Edgerly, then they go back at 9 o'clock, come back with a load of students, take a group of students back, and then they're there until 11. And then they go back to the high school for lunch, and then depending on the day and the schedule, there's a group of students that either come at 11:30 or 12:30, and then another group that comes at 1:30, and then 3 buses that leave at 2:20 each day to come back to the high school. It's complex, but there's several of us that have it down according to the schedule. And preemptively, when we knew this was going to happen a year ago, we redesigned the blocks to align with the schedule so that we had like all the sophomores down at Edgerly at the same time, the juniors, seniors, and then freshmen. And we have a phys ed class. It's either block 6 or block 7 down there, and they rotate. We still have 200 freshmen that are in exploratory, 100 stay here at the high school, and 100 are down there.
Okay, my takeaway from that is that there's huge planning and phenomenal amounts of details that are being managed every day, and thank you for that. President Ballantyne and then Dr. Ackman.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I will say, just if you're not aware, on the City Council side, the biggest issue, the biggest livability issue that we hear about is pedestrian and transit. And with all the construction that the city is going on, there has been an outcry in when, like all of Medford Street, for example, is ripped up because they're putting in new sidewalks, but there's not one sign up there that tells where the pedestrians need to go. So as I'm commuting to East Somerville with my daughter this morning, I see everybody walking in the street. So I'm just sort of highlighting, I understand that the city is under construction, but anything that obstructs the MBT ways or the ADA ramps, the sidewalks, we hear about. And when I say is, you know, like 7 out of 10 emails are about pedestrian and transit issues. So I appreciate the update, and anything as you're working with your buses that doesn't, you know, interfere or keeps that access open, or if you're going to use it, that there's clear signage. And I don't know if that comes from you or whether it comes from the traffic department, but would be really helpful. And thank you again for all your effort. I know it's not easy.
Thank you.
Superintendent Skipper, did you want to jump in?
Through you, Madam Chair. So just a big compliment to Leo and to the Somerville High staff, the CTE staff, for just all of their work in, you know, ensuring, knowing that there's going to be wrinkles in the beginning and just sort of working through it. Nobody signs up to, you know, be the bus monitors, but in many cases, people have just filled in the way that they've needed to, which has been wonderful to watch. I do appreciate Madam President Ballantyne's comments, and I think we're conscious of this as well because we also hear from parents. I did specifically ask the question about the MBTA piece because we had actually asked the MBTA for approval to use the MBTA stops, knowing that there would be times that the buses would need to pull in. And the city did not hear back from them directly, which the city took as a consent or approval. However, if there's particular complaints about it, what the city indicated, Rich Race indicated, is he would reach back out to MBTA. That said, we sort of did a survey of how often our shuttles are using the MBTA side, and we're really not. The only time that it does is at the lunch block where there's 3 shuttles on Highland, and sometimes our bus overhangs MBTA slightly. That said, we're going to do our best to condense the buses. To pull them up further to YMCA would mean the kids then have to cross School Street. And that is not an easy feat when you have a couple hundred kids. So, but that said, we take the feedback. We'll continue to try to improve, you know, work on communication as Leo has consistently done and Dr. Curley has done. So we do appreciate the comment.
Kat, did you want to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you. We acknowledge the 3 buses that are now being used to transport the students. It is a lot, and you know, hearing firsthand of how that happens. I personally do not take any of the shuttles to the Edgerly, but I know students who do. So I understand that it has been a bit hectic at first, and you know, hopefully we'll see where that goes from there. I did want to bring up that, you know, it has been just an issue, I think, with a couple of teachers, that they feel that their students haven't been able to arrive on time. You know, I heard that there was an issue with the bus company, but they feel that their students have not been able to arrive on time to class because of that. And even, I think there's been a huge issue with, like, skipping. Like, a lot of teachers have talked about that, that their students arrive late so they just don't even bother to come, or sometimes they'll get back to class late, so then they're scared of being late to their next class. So it's kind of been a dilemma in that sense. And also the construction that we talked about a bit has also been kind of affecting attendance, because just of the accessibility. It used to take me 15 minutes to get to school, and now it takes me 20. So for me, it's kind of been harder to show up to school on time. So that also has been a thing. Just, there's different paths and different things, as well as construction in other parts of the city. The traffic has been crazy. But yeah, just take away from that.
Superintendent Skipper?
Through you, Madam Chair, awesome points. And I think, we all experience this driving to work, but also walking wherever we are trying, that it's taking us longer to get there. And I know for myself, I have to plan longer in between. I think definitely in the first week to 10 days of school, there was this issue of getting late to classes. I think it would be good if we kind of looked at attendance, as we sort of have been. We haven't seen too much of a pattern. But to your point, let's take a look at it. Let's also look just at the classes and maybe pulse the teachers to see if there might be a couple of problematic blocks and see what we might be able to do to relieve that. So thanks for bringing that up, Kat.
Dr. Ackman?
I would just like to share my hearty thanks and amazing kudos. Being the ward representative for the Edgerly, I was fully expecting a litany of complaints about this. And while what I hear from Mr. DeSimone is it hasn't been perfect, my personal experience and from what I've heard from constituents, I mean, with the hundreds of more students attending, there has been no problem from the resident side. That's the term I'm looking for. So I am just going to applaud you there. When I take my kids past there at least twice a day, like, it seems to be working well. I've seen them out there, doing a great job. There is, like you said, always someone out there. I'm blown away at how successful from my end it's been. I know that there are many other challenges, but thank you.
Superintendent Skipper.
And just last thing, but Mr. DeSimone, perhaps we want to announce about culinary and cosmetology, since some services are coming back up online for constituents.
Through you, Madam Chair. So a little bit about the time out of classes. Going to the present and current time, we're have it down to about 5 minutes travel time after first block. So at the 9 o'clock transportation time, we can do it a little bit under 5 minutes, and we take it out of the CTEN. We have the students out there on the bus and try to get them back so that they're there a little bit past 9 so that they're not missing class. We do take attendance down there at Edgerly, and we take it at 8:30, and then if a student's marked late, we do have a person that comes in Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Jane Cummings, a retired vice principal, that has access to X2 to go in and update the attendance. And then the other thing Mr. Skipper was talking about was this week was our first week that we opened the hair salon. And we have our elderly customers back. They are very happy. I should say Friday was the first day. Friday was like a soft opening, and we did 8 clients on Friday, and today we did 12, and they seem very happy. So last week was also the first week that we were able to finally get the culinary program up and running. And we've also had a lot of support from the community. We have our juniors and seniors are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday are working with their instructor in the soup kitchen down East Somerville, and the students love it. So that's, we've had a lot of support through them. Today was our first day. We actually made breakfast for the students in Next Wave Full Circle. We brought 50 sandwiches upstairs, and they loved it. And this was all produced and cooked through the retrofitting that we did over the summer. So the students are starting to get back to somewhat of normalcy. It's not what they had, but it's pretty close. And they do see the big picture, at the light at the end of the tunnel with the new building.
Natalia?
Since we are on the topic of the CTE program and support, I've noticed that because of scheduling now, from experience, the sophomore class is also overlapping with the senior class in our dental program, and a big issue with that is textbooks, because we both use the same textbooks. So just like a shortage in supplies for, it might not just be dental, maybe just a wide range of the CTA programs, but it's just from personal experience that we are lacking sometimes enough books or enough supplies for our teacher to teach the whole class, because she has 2 different classes at the same time, so it may be difficult not only for the teacher but also the students to fully get their education. So I just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you for highlighting that. That is where the student perspective and experience is so helpful. Mr. DeSimone, did you want to speak to that?
Through you, Madam Chair. So that has been noted, that we did talk about that, and we have ordered textbooks. One of the reasons that we changed the schedule the way it was when the dental program was originally put into place, it was for 100% internship for senior year. So our goal this year is by November 1st to get all of the seniors out on internship, which as you know, on Wednesdays, they'll all be going out to Tufts University for the day. But the goal is to also put them out Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday in local facilities. So that still remains one of our #1 goals for November 1st. But I will look into the textbooks. I was made aware of that, and we did order additional textbooks and supplies, and I'll check on that tomorrow to find out where we're at with that. Thank you for telling us.
Thank you so much. We are going to take, any other questions? Okay, we're going to take a 3-minute welcome break. I'm going to reconvene this meeting in 30 seconds, now that we... All right, so there was no one signed up for public comment, so I am now going to move on to item number 5, approval of the minutes of September 9th, 2019.
So move.
There is a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Mr. Green to approve the minutes. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. The minutes are approved. We are now on to item 6, report of the superintendent. Superintendent Skipper?
Certainly. I'd actually like to have Dr. Boston Davis come up to the podium to speak. As you know, we've been working on our equity policy. Dr. Boston Davis has been working hard on getting input and doing some refinement of language. I'd like her to share in your packet. There is an update on the work that's been done and what we're proposing the next step to be. So with that, Jessica.
Through you, Chair. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone. So last spring, before I graduated, I tried to kind of cram into a month some focus groups based on the work that we did with the equity policy. And the memo that you received is an overview of those focus groups. So the focus groups it was a small student group. Again, this was in a month right before I graduated, so it wasn't all of the students, but it was a small focus group organized by Teen Empowerment with the students. And then there were 2 educator focus groups, one for pre-K through 8, and then one for high school educators. And the details of the number, what schools, et cetera, are in the memo. And I was not able to have a focus group for the community, but I was able to connect with a lot of community groups and share the memo with them. So for example, LPAC was a meeting that I regularly attended. I know that LPAC presented here in June, and actually just before that I shared with them recommendations in the memo. I also was at several parent meetings, like at the AFA PTA meeting and other meetings where I was able to hear different parents. I attended, for example, the East School Site Council meetings, and in those meetings, and several others that are listed in the memo, and in those meetings I was able to solicit feedback from community members, specifically parents, around their thoughts around equity in the district. And further, I was also able to share the policy with all the principals, all the current principals, 2019, 2020 principals, and other educator groups, such as the counselors at the high school. So overall, those were, the memo was just to describe how the focus groups took place, their structure, and also what came out of them. And we made some recommendations which are at the end, but their overall themes on the second page, which I apologize, I realize now there's no page numbers in the packet, but on the second page of my memo, there are some themes from the feedback based on the 3 questions that I asked, which are what looks good, what should change, and what is missing, and then recommendations made based on those. Ultimately, the memo the language didn't change all that much in the memo. We added in some lines around accountability. So when I say we, I'm talking about myself, but based on feedback from others. Added in, not accountability, intersectionality. I'm reading and talking at the same time. I added in some language around intersectionality, as that was a theme that came up a few times. In intersectionality, when I say that, I mean that we are people with multiple identities, and it needs to just be acknowledged when we're talking about equity, that I am a person of multiple layers of identities and not solely just my race, my gender, etc. So I added in that kind of language. I also kind of refined it a little bit around the indicators at the end. But one of the major themes that emerged was there were a lot of questions about implementation. There was a lot of feedback around, particularly from the educators, around giving their perspectives, not only in this policy, but in the implementation phase, and questions around So how do we know that it's happening? So that accountability area. And so I'm, what did not necessarily come about, well, I'll say this. What came about is that every school has different needs, has different communities, and therefore the implementation will look different at every school. So what I didn't do was make a specific implementation plan in the memo, in the revised policy, because it would look different at every school. But what it emerged clearly is that people want say, and I think in this we can also bring in more students, more community members in the implementation phase, when working with principals, when working with other school leaders and school communities to make sure that everyone kind of has a voice in how this policy will be implemented. Finally, you'll notice that I said consider accountability measures as my first recommendation. And when I say that, I mean, how do we know that folks are, that schools are able to implement this and that are making progress towards goals meeting, realizing equity as it relates to the vision in this laid out in the policy. And what I would say to that is, there's a few ideas, but one thing that emerged very clearly, particularly in the educator focus group, was that we have a lot of initiatives already. We have a lot of programs and ways to support already, and so one being the school improvement plans. And so if schools are not making progress, how can we use school improvement plans? How can we collaborate with roles like myself to make sure that they're making that progress?
Thank you very much. Are there questions, comments? Ms. Patone, and then Mr. Green.
Through Chair Norman to Ms. Boston Davis, thank you. First off, it sounds like it was a pretty a race to the finish in the spring and trying to get the feedback as robustly as you can, and there's a lot of depth to the information in the memo, so thank you for that. So just to clarify, the draft that we received in our packet isn't in changes mode, it's actually just a new draft.
That is correct.
So I would make the request that we have a version that has strike changes,
Absolutely.
just so that we understand what we're looking at. Just to give some orientation for our new members, we weren't done with the policy. There was a decision made, which I think everyone was unanimous about this, that we felt like we had gone to a certain point and it was a really good place to get feedback. So right now my understanding, and maybe you, the superintendent, or Ms. Boston Davis can clarify, that there is going to be a process coming back to the school committee to refine and complete the policy and vote it in.
Yes, I'd like to speak to that. I think I would very much like to get back to a very clear process, and my recommendation is going to be to have the equity policy to go to rules for more refinement before it then comes back to the full committee, because I think there's a fair amount of work that still needs to be done in terms of finalizing a draft and finalizing the language and the implementation. There's been a lot of work that's been done since last summer, so that I think in the interest of being both consistent in how we do things, but also in terms of efficiency, to have a smaller group really dig in and do more of that language work before it comes back to the full school committee. Ms. Patel.
Just a quick follow-up. I support that. I'm not sure what the timing is. I think the rules chair can talk about, where it fits into the agenda as we move forward, because the big picture is what's our target? When do we want to have something that's ready for prime time? Is there more feedback we want to get, et cetera? But we don't want this to be, an infinite work in progress. We know we want it to be good, and we want it to be really good, but maybe it won't be perfect, and that's okay too. So, thank you.
And I do need to apologize to Ms. Palmer as Chair of Rules, because I did not mention that to her beforehand. This was something I was thinking about today, and especially in light of the homework policy where we had it going through ed programs, and now I just think having a very consistent way of developing policies would behoove all of us. So we can talk about the time frame. I'm not sure if I don't want to put you on the spot right now, or if you had thoughts you'd like to share with us right now. It's up to you. About taking this, having the equity policy go to rules for, instead of hammering it out at the full school committee.
I think that makes sense.
Thank you. Did you have other comments, Ms. Palmer? I had Superintendent Skipper wants to jump in, and then we'll
First of all, I wanted to congratulate Dr. Boston Davis for an incredible amount of work that she's put in and an amazing job on this policy. Secondly, I'd like to say I'm really pumped and excited about this because in sitting through some of the superintendent's meetings in various parts of the state, it is clear to me that we are so much further ahead in our thinking and process. And so building off of that this year seems very exciting to me. I think this is the type of thing that we want to be able to use as a view as we're doing our work on enrollment and doing our work on human capital and doing our work on weighted student formula. So this is really an essential body of work for Somerville Public Schools, and I think I'm excited that rules will take it up, knowing the fine job Ms. Palmer does with rules in giving it, you know, a good thorough look through and thinking about the separation of what is actually policy and what is actually implementation. You know, what we're looking for to come out of rules is the guide in terms of the policy itself, but I think to Dr. Boston Davis's point, you know, the implementation is going to look different for different schools. And in many ways that's exciting, I think, to our school communities to acknowledge their differences. But the idea that we're all working towards some common goals is an important step we need to take. So thank you very much, Jessica.
No? Ms. O'Sullivan?
Thank you. Just real quick through you, Chair Norman, to Dr. Boston Davis. I just wanted to say thank you for the direct quotes. I find that so helpful, along with your summary themes, but to see the quotes of what some students have said and teachers have said. So I know that can be time-consuming with sticky notes and all that, but thank you for that.
Mr. Green?
A procedural question, I guess. If this is going to rules, would the proper way to get feedback on these focus groups be then to give the chair of rules a memo? How would you like those of us who haven't had a chance to chime in since this focus group was done to give that feedback to rules?
Do you have a preference as chair of rules, Ms. Palmer?
I think putting in writing is fine.
Yeah. The thought behind putting it to rules was not to squelch the conversation here, but to spare us wordsmithing by a large committee of very thoughtful and sometimes people. So it's not to shut down, but actually in the interest of moving forward, but also with an eye towards several new members joining us. I would like to get to sort of refocus on good work habits, and so that we can all work in predictable and efficient ways. That said, I really want to say thank you and emphasize or agree with what Ms. O'Sullivan said. Having the comments makes it so clear, right? My gut feeling was, ooh, implementate, right? And then you see it, you hear it from the students, you hear it from the teachers, from the people who are actually going to be living with this policy more intimately than anyone else, and it must have been a huge amount of work, but it really will inform, I think, a much better outcome. Mr. Mazza?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, Dr. Boston Davis has done a lot of work with the district leadership team, also the building principals. She has been a principal before, which makes a big difference. When you're talking with principals, the first time I met her, I knew what she was about. She talked to me about being a principal, so the first thing I said to her was, so you get it, which is very important when you're having conversations with principals about moving schools in a different direction. And, you know, she's done incredible work already in the district. Conversations have changed, and people are taking accountability and taking a look at what they need to do better in order to make equity woven into the fabric of what we do every day, because it's not a one-off. Equity isn't just a thing. It's something that needs to be part of everything we do, and looking through that lens. And, you know, Dr. Boston Davis is really driving that, so I want to thank you.
Thank you for that. Any, Ms. Patel?
Thank you, through Chair Norman. I had a question, just now that I'm processing that rules is now going to do this work, and I'm on rules with Ms. Palmer, and I think maybe Ms. Norman now. I guess through chair to Dr. Boston Davis, do you feel like you had an opportunity to really get student feedback? Do you feel like it's something that should go through the high school student council now that we have our new representation? Maybe this is something that Kat and Natalia, sorry, I know you guys are shuttling to get out, might want to participate in getting feedback, but I'm asking you, do you think that's necessary at this point? As well as, do you feel like we've really gotten robust feedback from teachers? So that's to you and what you think.
Dr. Davis?
Through you, Chair. So yes to both. So I'm going to start by saying I personally do feel a bit of urgency under moving the policy forward, in that I think that it is, one, really important for the district to have a stake in the ground, and it's helpful, I know, talking to educators, being from paraprofessionals, teachers, counselors, school leaders, who have been moving towards equity for a long time, and they're like, can you just come and tell what the district is doing so that I have like a stake in the ground to kind of lean on when I'm moving this work forward. So I say that to say it's been really helpful to even just kind of describe this process, and I'm excited and eager to move the process forward. That said, yes, I think it would be great for our students reps to chime in. I think it would be great, personal connection, for student reps to chime in. I think that would be awesome. I personally think we had a good turnout for educators. And the educators, while we had, I think it was somewhere around 45 educators come out. And beyond the formal focus groups, I was able to share it with many other people. So, for example, even just 2 weeks ago, I shared it with counselors at all the counseling department at the high school. And they're just kind of curious to see what the district is working on in its draft form, and knowing that things will likely change before it's passed. But just to kind of see the processes and to see, as they're trying to apply a lens of equity, as they are applying a lens of equity into all of their planning going forward, they're ready to start right now. And so just having an idea, a sense of where the district is right now. So I guess it's kind of like a both and, yes and response to your question. Yes, I would love to get their feedback. Yes, and we can get more feedback, and I'm eager to move the ball forward, and so that once the policy is passed, then we can start talking about implementation, as Superintendent Skipper said.
And Dr. Davis, can you say a little about the intern, the recent Somerville graduate, who brings a very fresh student perspective, who is working with you this year?
Absolutely, through you, Chair. Absolutely. So Nabila is a recent high school graduate who is interning with me this year. In fact, as I was pulling up, I was like, oh, I forgot to text Nabila to meet me here. But she's been working very, very closely with me. So she's many meetings, especially those that I've kind of framed the work of the district so far and my new position. She's been kind of sitting in the audience, cheering me on and giving me feedback, adjusting feedback as well of what I can do better next time, in the way in which I'm presenting myself and presenting the work of equity. She's also been a really great thought partner, given that she just graduated from the high school last year, and really been quite a pleasure to work with. So she's gonna be, she already is amazing, but she's gonna be like a really, really amazing leader one day. So I feel very honored to work with her now.
I like to think of it as a part of our human capital pipeline for a future Somerville employee. That would be my dream. But I know Nabila and her connections with students, not only is it her personal experience, but also her very fresh and very much, very broad relationships with students, I think will also bring a lot to this work. So, are there any more questions for Dr. Davis? Thank you so much for the leadership that you have shown, and with the thoughtfulness and sense of humor, as you've done countless hours of work, and we can't wait to keep moving this work forward. Thank you. Okay. Superintendent, did you have any equity policy last words, or?
No, just to simply say that I think part of the implementation piece is where will be great to get a lot of student voice and teacher voice as we start to think about what this looks like in the field on a practical application. So I echo Dr. Boston Davis's comment about wanting to be responsible and kind of get this moving and through so that we can continue the good work that we're doing, but have a common lens to do it with.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having a very long day with us. We are now going to move on to the next item, which is the homework policy update. Mr. Mazza?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, we have started the process of creating focus groups. Those will begin next month. There'll be 3 in October, 2 in November, 2 in December, and 3 in January, with 2 out of the 3 in January will be the 2 high schools.
Excuse me, Mr. Mazza, can you say who's participating in those focus groups?
Yes, so teachers at each school. As part of the professional development plan for the district, each school will have a focus group where Dr. Boston Davis or Karen Woods will represent our side, and President Rami Bridge and Vice President Megan Brady will be also partnering to facilitate these focus groups. The questions have been created. There's 3 to 4 questions. Part of that will be the research behind homework, because we know that's an important piece. President Bridge has the questions right now. When I get those back with his feedback, I will send them to you, because I want you to see exactly what we're going to be asking our educators in each focus group. Also, part of that will be a survey, because there'll be 2 sets of data that we will get from the focus groups and the survey. The survey, we can break it down into age bands, grade bands, K to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12, and I think that will be very informative. And President Bridge is going to help make sure we get a great turnout, great number of responses with the survey. You know, we want around 90% of teachers at least to respond, because we want to hear from a wide range of the educators that we do have as part of this process. I will update you on the data that we have each month as we go along, so that will be part of the process. And then at the end, in January, beginning of February, I will update you with collective information and data from all of the focus groups.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Mazza on the homework policy? All right. Thank you for that update. We look forward to moving that work forward. Now on to item B, the personnel report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also have a few notes that I'll read at the end. In terms of the personnel, there are several educators that we would like to thank for their retirement in their many years within the district, and now celebrating their retirement. So some of these I may have read at the end of the year or at the first meeting, but I'm going to read it because I want to ensure that they're all heard. Principal Hatch from East Somerville for her 14 years of service. Maria Medeiros, who's a 3rd grade teacher at Winter Hill, for her 23 years of service. Joan Duffy, who is an ECIP teacher at the Capuano, for her 18 years of service. Etna Sweeney, who is a special education teacher at Somerville High School, for her 32 years of service. Nayo Schiff, who is an ELL program administrator at Scale, for her 28 years and 5 months of service. Doreen Carreri, who is a full-time computer operator at Scale, for her 37 years of service. Margaret Garada, who was a kindergarten paraprofessional at the Brown, for her 29 years of service and 73 days. Bridget Travers, an ECIP paraprofessional at the CAP, for her 18 years of service. Catherine Ray, who's a technician, for her 29 years of service working centrally. And Victoria Macrocanis, who is a grade 6 ELA teacher at the West Somerville, for her 35 years of service. So all of these teachers and staff members, we appreciate all of your passion, dedication, and time that you gave out of your life and career for the Somerville Public Schools, and we thank you for your service. There are also, just in terms of personnel, as you know, this first personnel report shows a lot of shifting It will have summer resignations. It will have leaves of absences, which may be for personal, career, exploration, could be medical, could be maternity, paternity. We also have a lot of intra-district personnel transfers, which often are part-time as well, and then new hires. So I would take any questions, but the October one will be more comprehensive as we present the human capital report. And in terms of my notes, I just wanted to thank Chris Farsner from City Year. This past 2 weeks, we had a celebration first at Healy and then at Kennedy for the Biogen Care Deeply Volunteer Days of Service. And I know Mr. Green and Ms. O'Sullivan spoke at those. It's pretty amazing to watch the 100 volunteers come in and really transform the campus in having coordinated with the principal as to what are the community service projects they would like to take on. Assistant Superintendent Mazza also attended both of them and had only positive things to say at the end of them for the amount of energy and commitment that the volunteers showed. So if you haven't had a chance to go by the Kennedy or the Healy, there's an amazing amount of beautification projects that took place, ranging from the creation of a wellness center in the Kennedy to, at the Healy, redoing the gym in a way that's unrecognizable to the way that it looked previously. So we'd just really like to thank Biogen and City Year for their partnership. I'd also like to give a shout out and talk about a new opportunity that we've created for our English learners in partnership with Cambridge College this year. Somerville High School and Cambridge College staff worked last spring and over the summer to develop an early college dual enrollment program. Earlier this month, 12 juniors started their college journeys as the first Somerville High cohort to participate in the program. Most of these students are the first generation in their families to attend college. They were each able to select from one of 4 college campuses and are attending class at Cambridge College in Charlestown twice a week during their final block. Students through the program will earn 3 college credits each semester, and this is one of several initiatives underway at the high school this year and the first implementation of the educational redesign plan that we've been developing, as you know, with CCE and with the Bar Foundation. So there'll be a lot more to come on that, but this is the type of experience that we want to give our young people the opportunity for. I also want to just remind everyone the important corn shucking event is coming up. So in celebration of the National Farm to School Month, I actually love this event, the Somerville Food and Nutrition Services Department will be hosting the event on Thursday, October 3rd, 7 to 7:30 a.m. at every one of our pre-K and K-8 schools, including the Capuano. Students and volunteers come together and shuck locally sourced corn in the morning. There is just corn shucks everywhere. And then later on, that corn is cooked and served yummy for lunch. So it's a pretty neat way for the kids to learn about the farm-to-table process. And I always manage to get in there and shuck a few of the corns if I can get them away from the kids. But most of the time, the kids have it under control by the time I get there. Believe it or not, the winter sports registration will be open next week on Tuesday, October 1st. You can visit the Somerville High School Athletics website. You can click on the winter sports and registration link right there and get the list of sports. And the actual winter season starts November 25th. Finally, the Somerville Family Learning Collaborative Clothing Closet is open on Thursdays from 12 to 3. The SFLC Clothing Closet is located at the SFLC Center at the Cummings Building, and it's a free resource for all of our families. Thank you to the generous donations from many people, which are clothing, shoes, toys, and other items of need. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for the superintendent on her reports? No, okay. We will now go back to new business. We did the shuttle. So item B is the new DESI evaluating superintendent rubrics. I'm not looking to do a big dive into this. It's on the agenda for next week's personnel. The reason I put it on the agenda for this week is to highlight that there is a new rubric and that at next week's personnel committee meeting, we will be hopefully in one meeting coming to an agreement with the superintendent on both the timeline for this year's evaluation and the standards that we will be evaluating her on. So it's in your packet, so you don't come to the next, and it'll be again in the packet for next week. But if you stuck on the red line and happen to be looking at it, if there's questions that you have prior to the meeting, please send them to me and I will get them answered before so that we can have an efficient and productive meeting, because we are also in many ways trying to get back on more regular systems. One of them is being the superintendent's evaluation, starting in the beginning of the school year, agreeing on the timeline and the criteria. Mr. Green, did you have a question?
Make a quick comment. As someone who is both oftentimes critical of DESE and quite vocally not a fan of the old way of evaluating superintendents, I would like to just say that obviously the proof will be in the pudding, but from first glance, this looks like a much better way of evaluating superintendents, and one that actually has the evaluation be part of our actual process of moving students forward, as opposed to the kind of tacked on thing the old system always felt like. So I want to give DESE a rare kudos.
Well, coming from you, that is a meaningful statement. Thank you very much. At first glance, it doesn't look that much different, but what I do think it does is it's more streamlined. It's more, it focuses on more relevant rubrics, and I'm hoping it'll be a more productive process and one that we will be able to agree on and enter in with more clarity at the start of the school year. For a long time, because school committee members are elected on the calendar year, the superintendent's evaluation was also being done on the calendar year, and it really didn't make sense to be evaluating the superintendent in December of a school year. So this is part of that evolving process to improve our practices. And that's all that is. Okay, so item number C, Ms. Patone.
Thank you, Chair Norman, for including this, and I look forward to spending time perusing it. I just want to encourage my colleagues, although, for example, on the performance standards, there's 4 of them, and then there's all these sub-standards. We don't have to evaluate on every single one, and I really encourage you to take a few minutes and look at these lists and see which ones are most important to us. One of the things that really bogged us down in the past is that we attempted to try to do everything every year, and the idea of maybe doing a set one year and then a set the next year, so we're rotating through, and that we're really focusing, having quality versus quantity, and also relevance in our evaluation. So I encourage everyone to take a few minutes and think about what's most important this year. Thank you.
From the bottom of my heart, thank you for that comment, because this is something that we have struggled with year after year, and it does wind up being often broad and shallow, and instead of as digging in. So please come prepared for the next week's meeting, and if you've got any questions, call me, email me if it's procedural, and I'm looking forward to jumping in on this meeting next week on personnel. You okay? Yeah, okay. So the next item is item C, Somerville High School 2019 Somerville graduates.
I move to accept the superintendent's recommendation to grant Somerville High School diplomas to the following students: Sylvia Hover, Yolanda Monesiet, Armani Villa, Nisreen Alfati, David Almeida, Daniela Hurtado, Jose Cajallas Torres, Kim Rodriguez, and Taylor Casey.
Second.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Congratulations to this new set of graduates. We now are on to Superintendent. Did you want to jump in?
I did. I just want to publicly thank Joel Blackmere and several of the staff from Full Circle Next Wave who actually run our extended learning program. The reason that you actually see quite a few of our students who are able to graduate over the summer or outside of what would be the typical graduation season is because the extended learning program continues to work with our students to make sure that they can get their credits. Not all districts have something as special as we do in this, so I know how tirelessly they work, and I just want to thank them publicly as well as our teachers that continue to never give up on our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. We are now moving on to field trips. Is there a motion?
I move to accept the superintendent's recommendation to approve the following field trips: October 28th, 2019, Somerville High School cosmetology students to Providence, Rhode Island. November 18th through November 20th, 6th grade students from West Somerville Nature's Classroom. June 3rd through June 5th, I'm assuming this is 2020. despite the fact that 2020, 8th grade students from West Somerville visiting Washington, D.C.
There is a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Dr. Ackman. Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Great. Bon voyage, and we wish the students well on their off-site learning experiences. Item number 8, items from board members. Ms. Patone?
I have a question for the superintendent through you, Chair Norman. Last year, I had received some feedback from different people about the inability, and I might have wrong information, so that's why I'm bringing it here, to put on the multicultural fair because we didn't have a space to execute it. I've also gotten feedback that we may not be able to do a college career fair this year because of space issues. If these things are really happening, I would hope, first of all, very, very clear, you guys are doing amazing things with logistics and space, and so this is not a critique at all. But if we find that these two in particular events are important to our students, is there an opportunity now early in the school year to try to plan ahead and see if we can do something for our students, at least on these two topics? And again, I apologize if I am misinformed.
Superintendent?
Through Madam Chair, I'll check with Principal Lagambina, but I know that we are looking at alternative space. I mean, obviously, we tend to use the field house for most of the big events. Not so much the college fair. The college fair is generally more spread out, but because we're missing half of a building, it severely cuts down our ability. So we will have some conversation about what might be an alternative to it for the space. If it's good weather, we could potentially do it outside, but it's just the planning of that event, particularly the multicultural, takes quite a bit. And so you always take the, poor weather outside of the poor conditions. So I'll have a conversation with him. I know that they were trying to figure out what might be suitable. Could they use like Winter Hill, the gym, but then it's getting kids over there. And so, this is just one of those, this is the year, right? This is the year that we've got the disruption. So, but I will speak with him and see where we're at with it. I know he was talking with several of the committees about it.
I appreciate you bringing that up. Certainly, the college and career fair, the night component of it is certainly an important event for families, and I would hope that we'd be able to figure something out at another location.
Because we have everything set up.
At Edgerly,
Yeah,
great.
I think the CTE fair will be down at Edgerly. I think the question is the college fair, because you spread out in the classrooms. We certainly could look at Edgerly for it. I think the high school would be an issue because I don't think there would necessarily be enough classrooms. But I'll check with Tracy Small on that. The multicultural is a different situation because you need a very large space. So I will report back at the next meeting.
Thank you for that. Are there other items from members? Mr. Green?
Apparently, this is my week for commending people I usually criticize. But and for those of you who may not have followed, the state legislature has finally released an education funding bill that, if passed in its current form, would actually fully fund the education program for the first time in 25 years. I encourage all of us to continue watching the progress of this bill through the legislature, make sure no unpleasant things were added to it. But in keeping with our resolution of January in support of, this is a really good bill that would add $2 million to Somerville's budget every year in 7 years.
Thank you for that update. Are there any other items from board members? Ms. Palmer?
I just wanted to commend the Next Generation on their climate change strike on Friday. I heard there was maybe 20,000 students out at the State House. I heard that from my babysitter who was there. So I assume there were no issues district side in terms of the announcement going out in advance of that, but seeing our young people leading on this to save our planet is inspiring.
Thank you for that remark. Anyone else? President Ballantyne?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to that point, my understanding is one of the organizers too is a Somerville High School senior, Amalia Hochman. So I think that's gotten lost in the promotion of this. I just, you know, it was her mom posting something on Facebook that I realized that she was there, because we're captioned under the word Boston. You know, it's the Boston strike.
Superintendent?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, it was extremely impressive that one of our students was the co-organizer, and that it was entirely organized by students. It says a lot about this next generation. So yes, Amalia did amazing work, so we have complimented her. It's nice to be able to say the co-advisor was one of ours.
Any other items from board members? Dr. Ackman, are there condolences?
The Somerville School Committee would like to extend our deepest condolences to Helena Guedes de Oliveira, or to the family of Helena Guedes de Oliveira, mother of Simone Braga, school registrar at Somerville High School, and to the family of Stan Cody Jr., DPW commissioner and husband of Gay Cody, nursing director for Somerville Health and Human Services Department.